Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. A stunning display of dishonesty from the national press and radical left politicians. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. Last week, about 680 undocumented aliens were arrested by ICE officials countrywide. Many of them have already been deported. The coordinated raids targeted aliens who had committed crimes in the USA, mostly felonies. 75% of those taken into custody had convictions, including homicide and rape. One man arrested in Chicago and is an Iraqi citizen with a conviction of sexual abuse of a victim unable to consent. Many of the arrested non-felons were associating with the criminals. But those facts have largely gone unreported by the American press and by the radical left, which is actively misleading you.
What took place yesterday with raids in personal homes is part of the cog of the Trump deportation machine.
How inhumane this is to be breaking down people's doors and separating parents from their children.
This is Donald Trump really executing his campaign plan. He's trying to be a tough guy, so he's going to go after, the maids, the moms, the people that are working in the shops, instead of going after the hardcore criminals.
Maids, moms, and shopkeepers, according to that dishonest politician. Now, the false news reporting actually reached the level of hysteria. Newspaper headlines screaming things like, "The Trump deportation regime has begun." Immigrant community on high alert, fearing Trump's deportation force. On Devon Avenue in Chicago, news of immigration raids intensifies fears. We could find no headline in major newspapers, none, that bannered the fact the raids were targeted at illegal aliens who had committed serious crimes. Committed them. That's not press bias. That's blatant dishonesty. Here's another example. In the year 2013, the Obama administration removed from this country more than 434,000 illegal aliens, the highest number in history, which goes back to 1892. Did you see any anti-Obama demonstrations? Did you see any screaming headlines in the national media? No, you did not. Even after President Obama said this.
What we should be doing is setting up a smart, legal immigration system. It doesn't separate families, but does focus on making sure that people who are dangerous, people who are, gangbangers or, or criminals, that we're deporting them as quickly as possible.
And that's exactly what President Trump is doing, exactly. But the illegal immigration issue has been set up by the media to demonize Mr. Trump as a racist and a brutalizer of the poor. That's what's really going on here, a setup. It's flat out disgraceful. If the federal government cannot remove aliens who commit serious crimes in this country, then we don't have an effective federal government. Yet the far left and the press, knowing full well that the ICE raids last week were directed at dangerous people, chose not to report that, instead smearing President Trump. We have now reached a low point in American journalism. As for the far left, they are people who do not want any immigration enforcement. They want open borders. They want alien criminals protected. They want anarchy. Why? Because they don't like America as it stands now. So it is very important for all honest citizens to know you are not getting accurate information and that there is a radical element in this country that wants to destroy it. If this continues, there will be a breaking point. And that's the memo. Now for the top story reaction, joining us from Wheaton, Illinois, nationally syndicated columnist Ruben Navarrete. So, Ruben, I am very, very concerned about this blatant dishonesty, the reportage of the ICE raids last week. Are you as concerned as I am?
Bill, good to be with you again. I am concerned. My vantage point is of one who wrote about the 3 million deportations carried out by the Barack Obama administration. And I couldn't get a lot of these liberals in the media to join me on the front line. I couldn't get them worked up and excited about it. And now all of a sudden it's been surreal to watch in the last 30 days or so. They just woke up one morning and realized that people were being deported out of the United States In fact, for the last 8 years, 1,000 people a day have been deported out of the United States. What's new is the liberal outrage.
But these are criminals in the Trump administration, and most of them were targeted criminals, to be fair, in the Obama administration as well. They sent back border trespassers, but the ICE raids were not directed at what that politician said, the chambermaids, and they weren't directed at tearing families apart. They were directed at convicted criminals in this country illegally.
No, I disagree with you, Bill. Don't be too generous to Barack Obama. He said as a talking point that, in fact, he was only getting rid of gangbangers. You heard it there, and criminals. But when they did audits of the people that he removed out of the country, they found that in many cases it was only about 10 to 17, 18% of those folks who had criminal records. What you do, the reason this gets confusing for a lot of folks, if you have a housekeeper who you trust in your home with your family, and they get deported and they come back, the minute they come back, they've committed a felony.
Okay, but
so
it
we
should
call
be
them
a felony.
criminal.
It should be a felony.
Well, we call him a criminal. And what Barack Obama did, and I don't want you or Donald Trump to fall into this trap, is for 8 years, he played on the idea that when he said gangbanger or criminal,
all right,
an image would pop into our head.
Fine. Do you believe that the Trump administration last week was targeting violent felons? Do you believe that?
I don't believe that we know that the Trump administration pulled the trigger on these raids at all. I know we have the statement now from Secretary of Homeland Security,
yes.
John Kelly. Yeah, who said that this was a targeted...
75%, Ruben. 75%.
He said it was a targeted... He said it was a targeted plan that was already in motion and planned before Trump took office.
Okay, but
so this idea,
if
the
Trump
liberals are
didn't
quick to point
want
the
it,
finger.
Trump could have stopped it, and he didn't, because he's targeting criminal aliens. Yet the liberal
said he wants to
media
target-
won't tell you that, Ruben. They will,
Right,
they're not going to tell you that.
I agree with you. And they also didn't say that. They didn't tell us that when Barack Obama was doing it. I think conservatives have to be careful here not to play Obama's game, which is to deport, in fact, the maids and the housekeepers. Just say they're maids and housekeepers. Don't doctor them up with words like gangbanger.
Let that policy
or
be
gangster.
written, but the dishonesty of the reportage on the ICE raids last week under the Trump
Right.
administration was off the chart. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it.
I agree.
I don't see it.
No, it was surreal. It was surreal. These are the same people who at one point told me not to write about deporting people anymore. The fact that Barack Obama had deported people. I made liberal editors nervous.
In your view, they wanted to cover it up for the Obama administration, but they're using it as a club against Trump. Same people.
Yeah, they have discovered their humanity and outrage just in the last 30 days because in the old days with Obama, this was somebody who they supported, voted
Right.
for, and wanted to succeed, and they didn't want to make him out to be the bad guy.
All right, I do disagree with you a little bit. The Obama administration did target, though, the worst among them, and that people who are
That's what
deported,
he wants you to believe, Bill.
people who are deported and then come back again, I believe, deserve to be targeted. Ruben, always a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you. Next on the Rundown, we'll talk with a former ICE agent about last week's raids and what we can expect in the future. Then the personal attacks on Donald Trump and his supporters ramp up. Charles Krauthammer has some thoughts on that moments away. Continuing now with our lead story, ICE raiding, targeting criminal, illegal aliens. Joining us now from Irvine, California, Claude Arnold, retired ICE special agent who was once in charge of investigations in Los Angeles. So when you saw the local news in the Southland, as they call where you live, reporting on the raids, what did you think?
My first reaction is it was mass hysteria, right? People it being reported what actually wasn't happening. In fact, this operation was a fairly routine operation, the same type of operation they did conduct under President Obama throughout his administration. But it was being characterized as something that it wasn't. And what that did was it caused hysteria in those communities, people thinking that ICE is out.
All right, so they
rounding
turned
up
on,
people like
the
me.
local news, Channel 7, Channel 2, Channel 4, the Indies out there in L.A., and all of a sudden they're hearing that poor innocent migrants are being dragged off by ICE agents, when the stat is, in Los Angeles, out of the 165 arrested, 151 had felony arrests. 151 out of 165. And the others that were taken into custody, I understand, had deportation warrants out on them. They were already ordered deported. Okay?
Yeah,
so
the
did you
majority
hear
of them
any
did,
of that on any of the network news, local news in Southern California? Anything like that at all?
No. I've been doing some media today, so hopefully they'll be reporting what I told
But
them.
why didn't they report the truth?
You have to ask them why.
You don't
I
have
no
any idea living in that area as long as you have and dealing
Yeah,
with
of course.
illegal aliens? You know
Look,
why they didn't.
Yeah, it's politically motivated.
Okay.
Yeah, of course it is. They're
And-
trying to characterize the Trump administration as being heavy-handed.
Okay, but it's more than that. They're trying to get migrant viewers to watch their channels out there. And so they're not going to say, oh, these are the bad guys, these are the felons, the rapists, the gang members. They're going to say, oh, they shouldn't be doing this to you. It's about money as well as politics, is it not?
It may very well be, yeah.
Ratings. All right. Now, in your experience, is the Trump administration doing anything differently than the Obama administration did?
I think there's one very small difference. The executive order that President Trump issued on immigration has returned to the line-level officers and agents the discretion to make arrests for people who are in the country in violation of immigration law, regardless of their criminal history. So in doing these targeted operations, which clearly were targeting felons, dangerous criminals, if they encounter someone who is in the country in violation of law, instead of looking like the other way, as they were required to under the policies of the Obama administration, they have the discretion to arrest someone and initiate
All right,
removal
but you use the word
proceedings.
discretion. What the ICE people tell us is if the illegal alien is not deemed to be a danger to the country, all right, they let them go.
They do. They're not detained. They may put them into the process, initiate removal proceedings that still have to go see an immigration judge, etc. But they're not going to detain them. You're absolutely right. They don't have the bed space to detain people like that. They've got to prioritize who they detain and who they don't detain.
All right, Mr. Arnold, we appreciate it very much. Thank you. Directly ahead, Charles Krauthammer on the personal attacks President Trump is being subjected to. Joining us now from Washington, Charles Krauthammer. So Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush, they got hammered by the personal stuff, but nothing like this. So what do you think the effect is, because it's not going to get any better, it's going to get worse, on the general population, younger people? I mean, is civil discourse gone forever in this country?
Look, it's clearly going to have a coarsening effect. The younger people are going to grow up in an atmosphere where this kind of invective is the norm. But I would disagree on one point about this being completely new. George W. Bush received as much abuse as any president I've ever seen. In fact, I'm the one who coined the phrase the Bush derangement syndrome because of the fact that so many people on the left were attacking him in ways that were deranged. I mean, they were over the top, and there was a personal animus. He was called a Nazi and all that. So we forget. But the difference is this. That tended to set in after the Iraq War. So it was a reaction to something that Bush had done. Today, it's Trump, who's only been in office for 30 days, for 3 weeks, and he's got this reaction. It's kind of a visceral, personal reaction to him, and I do think it can only have a negative effect. The problem is he feeds back into it with his own invective, and then you get a new generation raised in an atmosphere where there are no adults in the room.
All right, now, throughout our history, we've had presidents that did fight back, like Mr. Trump, Andrew Jackson being the most notable. But there were, presidents like Grover Cleveland and people like that who did that kind of thing. But now the mass media and social media, all right, transports every tweet, every insult by not only the president, but those attacking president right into everybody's computer and machine. And so that I think this is going to poison reasonable discourse going forward. And there's no coming back from it. Pretty black view, but I think that's what's in play.
I'm not so sure. I think people do come back. The Reagan years were pretty bad. The problem is that he was so amiable. It was Clark Clifford. Clifford was the Democratic wise man who coined the inimitable phrase that Reagan was an amiable dunce. You couldn't hate Reagan. You could think he was wild, he was a fascist or whatever, he's going to get us into World War, but it was hard to hate him And you know, but after a lot of invective against him, you had the Bush senior years. They were fairly quiet. The Clinton years were pretty rough. I mean, the guy was impeached after all, and you know, it went a long way. So I think we've had some pretty rough politics.
But the media didn't serve up the attacks on Clinton. They came from primarily political sources.
The media were as hard on them as any Democrat. The media,
But
of course.
it wasn't a personal thing. I mean, you remember the mantra, and that was promoted by the media as well, the big city media anyway, that it's only about sex. All right, that's all. It's you guys are making a big deal out of it. You got to ignore it. This came from the liberal media. They pushed it, and now what you have is every single day, Trump is this, Trump is that. And high school kids in particular, I think, college kids, they don't pay attention. But high school kids, they hear this stuff. And you saw it last week here in New York City. I don't know whether you saw Waters' report when these kids went out of class to protest. And then we caught up with them, and they didn't know what they were protesting against. They were just yelling ridiculous slogans. They had no idea what they were saying.
But that worries me less than anything else. I mean, high school students who have no idea what's going on. It's like the Occupy Wall Street people. You'd interview them. They had no idea why they were there. It was fashionable. The first blast of a cold winter wind, and they were gone and scattered. I'm not sure that matters. Also, young people, they do grow up. It takes a little bit of time.
Some of them.
But, well, the 18-year-olds become 35-year-olds with 2 kids and a mortgage, and they stop acting like snowflake idiots. So I'm not so sure that's a permanent phenomenon. And I do think, I'm not going to let you off the hook here, Trump contributes to this by giving back in his own way. You know, lying, Ted,
well, that's
crooked,
what got him there, though,
crooked.
Charles.
It might have gotten him there, but that makes it worse.
The White House.
But that makes it worse. Then he got a positive incentive to go ahead and do this. He will be imitated by others after he comes and goes. That's what I think is going to hurt.
But it's hard. All right, look,
discourse
I'm not
over the
justifying
years.
any ad hominem, that's to the man, attacks on anybody. All right, we don't do that here. It's all fact-based here. But I don't know, in this vicious climate, all right, I think Trump's got to fight back. Now, whether he does it in another way, maybe they should have a big meeting there and say, look, we might be able to do this more effectively. Last word.
Yeah, they got to take away the Twitter machine.
I know.
That's the Trump id speaking. And he's strong enough, he's got enough subordinates who can carry the fight. He needs to be above the fray.
A little bit more. I agree with that.
I don't think he'll ever do it. That's not his nature, but that's his problem.
If success starts to roll in, he might. If failure rolls in, he won't. Charles Krauthammer, everybody. Playing more heads. The Factor moves along this evening. The radical left continuing to bring up the Nazi Party as mentioned in relation to the Trump administration. Britt Hume has some thoughts on that. Second follow-up segment tonight, as you may know, Nordstrom's and a few other retailers have downgraded products from Ivanka Trump, the president's daughter. Now, Sears and Kmart have stopped selling some Trump home furnishing products online. So what's behind all this? Joining us from Los Angeles, Leslie Marshall. From Washington, Katie Pavlich. I didn't even know there were Trump home products.
Well, now you know.
So, I mean, I'm a IKEA guy. I just, look, simple man. All right, I don't need my house to look like a palace of Louis XIV. But this is also sudden. I mean, all of a sudden Ivanka's stuff is going out the window and Trump's lamps are going into the basement. I mean, what is this?
Well, first of all, I had to fact check you and say that IKEA furniture is not simple to put together, and everyone's goal in life is to buy furniture that is put together rather than the kind you get from IKEA, but I do also like IKEA. But in terms of what's going on with the Ivanka Trump brand, it's very clear that her brand is suffering from the Grab Your Wallet campaign, which is essentially a liberal mob that doesn't just go after brands they don't like, but goes after the distributors or the retail stores that dare to sell that brand.
What's the mob? What was the name of it?
Grab Your Wallet campaign. And we see this across the board.
Campaign.
It's not good enough for liberals to just disagree. They have to destroy the livelihood of those they disagree with.
So Grab Your Wallet is a website? Is that a social media thing? Is that what it is?
It's a website that details all of the companies like Nordstrom, like Sears, that sell Ivanka Trump or Donald Trump
and
products.
for the sole purpose of telling their readers not to buy the stuff and to hurt the retailer that sells it. That's
right, but
what
there's
it's
also an adverse effect and another consequence that if these stores do decide to continue selling these products, there will be picketing outside of the stores.
Picketing.
There will be threats. There will be customers will be intimidated into not buying these products. So
Okay.
it's one thing to vote with your wallet, but it's another to deny other
Do we
people
know?
the choice of doing
We got
the
to
same.
find out who's in charge of this stuff so we can put their pictures up on television. Do you agree with that
Waters.
assessment, Leslie? Do you agree that this is a grossly undemocratic intimidation?
I don't think it's an intimidation, and I think it is extremely democratic. Although it's politically motivated, obviously, there are those that are saying, look, we lost at the ballot box, so we're going to use our wallets and our purses
So let me get this
to
straight.
win
You don't
as
think
consumers.
threats of picketing and a disruption in a private business is intimidation?
I don't think that saying, look, I don't want to buy products with
No,
this
that's
name
not
on
what
it.
this
I
is
don't want to buy
about.
products that are made in China.
According to
I
Katie-
don't think that
No,
that is an intimidation at all.
Leslie, listen to me. It's not what this is about. According to the website, they're going to disrupt the business if they continue carrying products they don't like. You say that's not intimidation?
I don't think that a hashtag on Twitter and a website that lists all of the companies that carry products with the Trump name, is intimidating. I think what it's doing is educating people as to where they're spending their money.
You know,
But why go
education
after the
is
store?
wait, Katie. Education is supposed to present both sides of the story. All right, not a hyper partisan point of view. That's not education. It's propaganda. Is it not, Leslie?
Well, listen, Bill, in classroom, I would agree with you, and you know more about a classroom
you
as a
used the
former
word
teacher than
educated
I.
and
You
use
have
the
to
word
present both.
educated.
But educating somebody or giving information on Twitter with a hashtag or at a website, that's not always going to be fair and
It sounds
balanced,
like it's
and you know that.
activism to me. Go ahead, Katie.
Well, again, I want to stress it's one thing for an individual to decide I'm not going to spend my hard-earned money on Ivanka Trump or Donald Trump products. That's one thing. It's a whole nother aspect for this Grab Your Wallet campaign to go after the stores that dare to sell these brands. And this isn't just, isolated to Ivanka Trump or Nordstrom or these stores. We've seen this across the board. If you don't want to sell a wedding cake to a certain couple, then you're going to be destroyed financially.
Well,
If you have a political disagreement, we saw it with the Firefox CEO. If you dare stand up for something you believe in, your entire life is going to be destroyed. You'll be fired from your job. This is a leftist tactic. It's just taking a different form in the sense of
last
Nordstrom and all
question,
these other
real
stores dropping the
fast.
product.
Do you believe that Nordstrom's and the Sears and the other stores have caved in? This is what you believe they've caved in because of this far left website. That's what you believe, Katie?
I think I don't necessarily think they're caving in. I think that they're seeing a result of this boycott, and I guess they would be caving in because they're responding to preventing this kind of disruption inside of their businesses.
There are just as many people who like President Trump who could buy from these stores if they were motivated. All right, ladies, good debate. Thank you. We appreciate it. We come right back. Britt Hume. On the radical left, using Nazi analogies to criticize President Trump and his supporters. Thanks for staying with us. I'm Bill O'Reilly in the Hume Zone segment tonight. Actress Meryl Streep received an award from the Human Rights Campaign over the weekend here in New York City. Ms. Streep, as you know, a very liberal person who despises President Trump. After her criticism of the president at the Golden Globe Awards a few weeks ago, Ms. Streep herself received criticism. She didn't like it. Ms. Streep makes mention of brown shirts. They were an arm of the Nazi Party earlier in Hitler's rise, run by a man named Ernst Röhm. Essentially thugs, the brown shirts beat people up and disgraced their country. Hitler eventually had the leadership murdered. What Ms. Streep seems to be implying is that the criticism of her after the Golden Globes came from Nazi-like people or something. Joining us from Florida, Britt Hume. You have any idea what Meryl Streep was trying to say there, Britt?
Well, I think she was signaling to the audience in the room, which no doubt has no more use for Donald Trump than she does, that she's one of them. and that wants them to believe, I guess, that she is courageous for taking on Donald Trump, and that she's been subjected to this Nazi-like behavior, I guess, on Twitter or wherever else from people who admire Mr. Trump. So I think that's what it's about, and it's not uncommon these days to hear these veiled or not so veiled references to fascism and Nazism in connection with Donald Trump. I think it's spectacularly ill-informed and nearly hysterical, but there's a lot of it out there.
There is. Now, we put in a call to Ms. Streep to come on program. We want to talk about the history that she refers to, because what bothered me about it most of all is that she seems to be saying that if you criticize her comments about the president, that you're a Nazi. You know, the brown shirts, as you know, and anybody who knows history, were vicious animals. I mean, they were too gross for Hitler, if you can believe it. He killed them, the leadership. And they violated every tenet of civility. So when you're going to make a comparison to killers, and that's what the brown shirts were, to people who criticize you for your political comments in America, I mean, that's inappropriate, I think. That's inappropriate.
Well, I suspect what happened here, Bill, is, and I was myself pretty critical of Donald Trump at times during the campaign, in the early going in particular. And his supporters came down on me on Twitter pretty hard, and they said some pretty ugly things. But that's one thing. I mean, those are words. I mean, I didn't enjoy it, but I didn't take it all that seriously, and it never occurred to me to draw an analogy between these pro-Trump people who were pretty ugly at times and anything remotely comparable to what went on in Hitler's Germany. Difference it's just way beyond the pale.
Sure, there's a difference between gross speech, which happens on both sides of the political spectrum every day, and the violence that Ms. Streep is referring to. What are bots? You know what bots are?
Bots are short for robots, and you can set up, for example, on Twitter, you can set up basically a bot account, the effect of which will allow you remotely or without your being present to repeatedly post a tweet over and over and over again so people will see it. And so it's an automated form of tweeting, and you can use that. Having said all this, Bill, I would add one thing. Look, one thing first of all, Meryl Streep is a spectacularly great actress, no question about that. And some of what she is saying is not too far off from some of the things that are being said, even by some of Mr. Trump's conservative critics. You hear autocrat, you hear something close to the word fascist being used. So, if you think the way she does and are inclined to think the way she does, you don't have to look far these days to find people.
No, but it's a little bit of a difference because those comments are leveled. They're leveled at the president. She categorized the people who criticized her, and I'm sure she did get some gross stuff, as you did, as Nazis. And that's wrong. All right, Brit Hume, everyone. There he is. Factor tip of the day, more good deeds done by our viewers in a moment. First, a quick note. If you don't have a Valentine's Day gift yet, crisis time will save you. Go to BillO'Reilly.com right now. Get a premium membership gift. And then you give it to the object of your affection. Presto, good tidings. Now the mail. Janet Castonguay, Rancho Santa Fe, California. Bill, the appeals court stated that the travel ban appeared to violate due process rights of lawful permanent American residents. Your example of someone boarding a flight in Libya with a fake passport is disingenuous. False, Janet. I gave that example to explain why the Trump administration selected the 7 countries for the travel scrutiny, not to explain the court ruling. There was no linkage. In the countries on the list, there is no effective vetting of any travel. Tracy O'Brien, Dunedin, New Zealand. Why are countries like Saudi Arabia and Pakistan not on the list? Because they have functioning governments and passport controls, Tracy. John Norton, Brazoria, Texas. O'Reilly, you said the Trump administration should have explained the policy better. The law as written does not require that, but the court of public opinion does, John. Richard Lane, New Orleans, Louisiana. Bill, you just placed spin on the Wounded Warriors situation. The charity fired its 2 top executives in the scandal. We reported accurately, Richard. The Better Business Bureau investigated Wounded Warriors and now give the charity a good report saying the so-called scandal really didn't amount to much. No spin, just the facts. Bob Powell, Amenia, New York. Bill, after hearing your reporting, I am supporting Wounded Warriors again. Well, good, Joe. That's fair. Simon Forbes, Sydney, Australia. Hi, Bill. First-time viewer. Thought your interview with President Trump was first class, the way the news media should be. Well, I appreciate that, Simon. The entire interview, unedited, posted on BillO'Reilly.com. For our segments, we had to edit, and for the Super Bowl interview the day of the game, we had to edit it down. But now you can see the whole thing with the president, start to finish, the way it went. Phil Steinhoff, Parker County, Texas. The biggest threat to our country isn't Islamic terrorism. It's the young people Waters interviews. The view of reality could turn into anarchy. Many young Americans are dopes, Phil. I was. Big dope. After a while, a significant number wise up as they get older. Margaret Glasser, Louisville, Kentucky. Mr. O'Reilly, I was sad that you and Mr. Waters made fun of some of the students. I'm in high school and closely follow current events. I've even read 2 of your books. And someday you will lead your generation to sanity, Margaret. Keep it up. Gary Patterson, Salem, Oregon. O'Reilly, thanks for killing the rising sun. My father died in a Japanese POW camp. So much for the Geneva Convention. I appreciate your honest, no-holds-barred writing of history. Well, I'm sorry about your dad, Gary. Lots of great men lost their lives in the Pacific Theater, and that's why I wrote Killing the Rising Sun. And a quick happy birthday to Cecil Windsor, 103 years old in Tennessee. I can't do all the birthdays, but way to go, Cecil. And finally tonight, the fact or tip of the day. I received a letter from John Regal, who lives in Peru, Indiana. I want to thank everyone from the bottom of my heart for my track chair. It has opened up a whole new world for me after my leg was amputated. It rides wonderfully and is quiet in the woods. The Lord has truly blessed me with this chair. Now, John is one of the thousands of severely wounded vets whose lives have been changed by donations to independencefund.org. You guys have given almost $30 million over the years, bringing relief to the brave men and women who have sacrificed so much. Tip of the day, tip of the hat to all of you who support independencefund.org. And that is it for us tonight. Please check out the Fox News Factor website, different from BillO'Reilly.com. Also, I'd like to spread out about the Factor anywhere in the world. O'Reilly at FoxNews.com, O'Reilly at FoxNews.com. Name and town if you wish to opine. Word of the day, do not be umbrageous when writing to the Factor. Now tomorrow, Sergeant Bo Bergdahl in court. His attorney trying to get the desertion deal thrown out because of President Trump. We're going to have our Law and Order team analyze that. It should be a good segment. Again, thanks for watching us tonight. I'm Bill O'Reilly. Please always remember that the spin stops here, because we are definitely looking out for you.